auditing Excel spreadsheets is something that I have been doing for many years, but many companies do not, and it is kind of interesting to see what you notice and how does this relate to macros. But what we're going to be doing is I will be giving away a sample spreadsheet or macro enabled spreadsheet that you can utilize to risk rank all of your spreadsheets. And it's kind of it's a very neat tool developed by Mr. Excel himself, and something that I find is a very useful product in getting a good sense of your risk. And when you take a look at companies, a lot of people would say if they turned off their ERP system, they could survive. They would kind of get by. I don't know how true that is today, but I'll just say that word. But imagine if you turned off Excel spreadsheets for everybody, the company would crumble. And it really is because companies have become so dependent on the free ability that Excel provides you in building a little application, be it a macro like we're doing here, or just be it a spreadsheet that follows many different business rules. Active Data or Information Active is a product out there, and Active Data is one of their product lines. Active Data for Excel is something that we're going to utilize first, and then we're going to utilize a macro enabled worksheet on top of Active Data. So Active Data kind of fits within your toolbar. And you can see here when you download it, you can get a 30-day download for free. So if you want to test it out and do all the things that we're talking about here, even before buying the product, that is fine. It's a trial, and you're welcome to do that. And again, what's also nice is all of the macros that we talked about in building macros, you can also macro into Active Data. I mean, you have to be a little careful of how you're setting up your data and what you're looking for and all that stuff. But, if you're doing things over and over again, like a duplicates test or a Benford law test or whatever, you can macro a lot of that as well. So the one thing that we're going to talk about is automating the risk analysis of your spreadsheet. So step one of that process is to actually index all of your sheets. And actually, we're going to index workbooks instead of sheets here. We're going to index books or workbooks. And I'm not going to click this button because it can take some time. But what you can do is actually, browse and say, okay, I would like to go after my entire C drive, and I would look at every spreadsheet associated with that particular C drive. And you could do this on your network, your computer network. You could do this for just maybe some spreadsheets that you received and you put into a folder called AuditNet November 16th. And that's usually what I would do. I would collect a bunch of spreadsheets from a department, put them into this folder, and then run this indexing worksheets, and you just click the finish button. When you do that, and bear with me one second here, we're just going to I'm going to open up a past index that I created. I actually talked to the developer about this when we developed this initially, and I did run this before. You can kind of see what we got here result-wise. And what we have is a indexing of your hard drive. And it actually gives you lots of stats, and it actually even goes into every sheet within the workbook. So if I had a workbook here, let me just get a payable sample pivot workbook. There are multiple sheets within that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and each one of them is a sheet or a chart, and it kind of logs all of this in. So it's a great way just to get a population summary of what you are looking at. Well, in addition to that, what it does is it also provides you an indexing of all of your information. So let's take a look at what we have here. And this is where I kind of helped out, because what I wanted to do is identify some of the areas that you might consider to be risky. So let me just kind of open this up just a little bit so you can see it by double clicking on the row, the column there. It tells you the number of rows, the number of columns that have data, the number of cells that have data, the number of blank cells within that set of cells, the number of hidden worksheets or cells in this case, and the number of used cells, the number of named ranges, and there's at least one in there at least. The number of links, and I believe that is external links to other spreadsheets. We didn't have any. Number of formulas, the number of errors in formulas if you had any, the number of if statements, because I find an if statement function can be a little bit odd or something that might be risky. A nested if statement. Now this is one where we have, and nested if statement is even more risky. So, it's an if this and that and, that kind of thing. Now the n sum plus and the n sum minus, I like these because what they do is they actually identify areas where you have a sum, but then you're adding something to it. You have a plus symbol, so you have like equal sum, A1 to A50, and then you have a plus something else or a minus something else. And that is always a little risky because you're wondering, are people plugging data to make it work? Or, why not just sum up the column and that's it? So we just kind of highlighted a bunch of different attributes or variables that you might want to risk rank your spreadsheet on. And I like active data, and the reason I suggested it is that it provides a really nice population summary, something I've never seen before in any other schedule. Don't know how to make the macro to do this one, so I'm not even going to try it and tell you you may want to just try this add-in, especially given it's free for the 30 days. And once I have this opened up, what I can now do is open up a risk ranking spreadsheet, and it's a macro enabled spreadsheet that we can utilize. So what we're going to do is open up the Excel risk rank spreadsheet that will be provided to you. And here's a key point. Again, I had my options set in the Trust Center to be disabled but notify. So I can click options and I can say enable the content. And again, those step process we had was right here. But what I'll do is I'll just go to my index, and what I can now do is go over to my other Excel spreadsheet, which is the active data index that we had set up. And I can copy by just highlighting, by selecting that cell right there and right clicking and saying copy, and going down and going over to my Excel risk rank. I can actually go over to the cell A and do a right click and paste. And what that'll do is provide all of this information into this schedule right here. Again, I can go and select the macro here by going developers, macro, calculate weighted scores, hit the run button. Now what that did was, and before I look up top here, I'm just going to go over to my weighting sheet. What I can do, again, this is, we'll do an equal sum here just to show you. This will add up to 100 points. Now what you can do is you can change this to whatever you'd like. If you think errors and formulas should be 35%, and let's say the number of columns is 0%, we're still kind of keeping that 100% there. And what we'll then do is go over to the weighted item here. So now that it's weighted, what it's doing, I actually like to take this schedule and just kind of drag that bar over so I know what that is. And I can then go over to the far right. I don't really care about all this stuff happening in between. What it's doing is every time there's an item showing up like n sum plus, it is taking for all of the spreadsheets. So if again, we have 7 of them, it's then saying let's take the number of points, weight it, and weight it based on the sum of the number of items. So it's like 1/7 and multiplied by the score that we had and put that in there. And and again, it's setting up a weighted score across all of your spreadsheets. So I go all the way over to the right here, and I go to this column called weighted scores total. And you can do a few things. I mean, if you'd like to copy this to a new schedule, you can. A lot of times, again, I just like to kind of drag this down as well so I can see it. And I like to just scroll down and take a look and say, that one looks a bit risky. Let me highlight that guy. Let me go up. That one looks a little bit risky as well, and that one looks a little bit risky as well. But again, just showing you the complexity here of this macro, and that it's not only taking the weightings that you've set, taking this index, but then calculating a weighted average for each column and risk scoring in totality over to the way right here, if I can get there, all of your spreadsheets. So you can actually get a risk score for every spreadsheet that you can then just very quickly take a look at and say, these are the 3 or 4 spreadsheets that I really should be looking at because they just look really weird. And not only is it the spreadsheet itself, but as I go over to the left here, it's the actual sheet within that spreadsheet. So it's the payable sample data within the payable sample pivot. That particular sheet is the one item that I should be looking at, and because it has one of the higher scores out of all of the data.